All right, what up, folks? I wanted to make a quick, well, not a quick video, but wanted to quickly do this video about consciousness. All right, I'm going to assume that you already understand or that maybe you've already done some research. So I don't want to have to cover every nitty gritty of, you know, backing what I'm about to say because that would take up more time. And I just want to kind of get to the point with this. All right, so when it comes to consciousness, most people see consciousness as being awake or being asleep, but what they mean there is awareness. Do you have awareness? Consciousness never ceases. Consciousness was uh consciousness existed before you took human body, before you were born on this earth, and it'll exist when you leave that human body and leave this earth. Consciousness never ends. It always exists. And the best way to look at consciousness, well, yeah, I think one of the best examples for consciousness would be dreams. All right, so I'm going to use dreams to explain how I see consciousness. Okay, so in a dream, and I'm using this still from the movie Inception. Well, not a still, but I think it's like the poster cover or whatever. So I'm using this from the movie Inception. So if you've never seen that, you can watch that, and I think that'll kind of go in hand with what I'm saying. All right, consciousness is a realm. It is, well, it's actually more than a realm. Let's look at consciousness as, I want to almost call it existence because there is nothing else but consciousness. At least that we know of. There is nothing else but consciousness. When near death patients, when they die and they come back to life, or when in the time that they are dead, they say it was exactly as if I was in my body, but I wasn't in my body. I could still see, I could still, do all these things with that we thought were senses, but they aren't senses. Basically, the person could still perceive. They still had the ability to perceive. They felt pretty much the same. But the only thing is they were bodiless. They were a disembodied consciousness. That they were just pure consciousness at that point. That's my point. All right. Now, in that realm, in consciousness, so let's just say sleep. Now, okay, let's talk about right now. We're in waking consciousness. We're in waking life. This is like the outside of the onion. This is the skin of the onion, the most superficial level of consciousness. Now, just like an onion, you can peel off that skin, then you can peel off of one layer and go to another layer, into another layer, into another layer, into another layer. Um, those consciousness, getting deeper into consciousness like that would be like meditation, sleep, uh hypnosis, death. Those things are deep into consciousness where you go from this waking consciousness, waking awareness that is constrained by the brain and the senses and things like that, and beliefs and logic. And then you can go deeper into consciousness where it's like meditation, or we'll get into that maybe. And then where I want to go to is dreams or sleep. All right, so in sleep, you experience pure, unfiltered consciousness. That means that there's no logic, there's no analytical brain. At least for the most part, there's no analytical brain. So if you were to see a flying cow in waking life, you would take a picture of that, post it on Instagram, and it would go crazy, right? It would go viral because that's out of the scope of normal reality. In a dream, however, you can see a flying cow, and for some reason, it can make perfect sense to you because, in all actuality, reality is what you believe it to be. What you believe is possible is your reality. So, in the only reason that we have this quote unquote waking reality is because of the constraints that we've placed. Well, there are rules here, but also because of the constraints that we've placed based on our belief. So if something is illogical to us, then we won't believe it. We will only believe what matches up with our logic, which is based off of experience. So in that case, we shape our own reality. In a dream, however, those constraints are removed. So reality is whatever you conjure it up to be, which in all reality is how reality is created. All right, so in a dream, you notice that there is a scenery created for you. You notice that there are people in the dream as well. that you can talk to and can talk to you, and you can get information from them and wisdom from them and things like that. Yet and still, these dreams are happening pretty much within you. They're within your consciousness. So I think that that's very interesting because these beings can tell you things that you don't even know or that you didn't know. They can give you information that you didn't know. But the crazy thing is, these dream beings are you. They're just other aspects of your own consciousness. They're okay, so what I'm trying to say is in the dream, you are not just the dreamer, but you are also the dream landscape. You are the buildings in the background. You are the cars and the buses, and you are the extra people. Those people that have their own consciousness exist within your consciousness. They are you. They are different aspects of you. Just like in waking life and near death patients say the same thing. They realize this. Those who have gone into deep levels of meditation and have transcended duality also realize this. We are all one mind. Just like if you were in a dream, let's say you were a dream character in my dream, like you were a fraction of consciousness from me within my consciousness, and I experienced you in a dream, and I came to you and said, "This is my dream. Everyone in this room is you and me. We are all the exact same mind with the illusion of separation, because in a dream, the person is not separate from you. There is only the illusion of separation, just like you can be the dreamer seeing through your dream eyes and then go third person and be looking at yourself from a totally different angle as if you're outside of your body. Because in all actuality, there is no body. Only where consciousness or attention has decided to be focused, so that even in the dream, there is no body that you inhabit. You are the entire dream, meaning that you are superposition. So that means that you are every inch of the dream. You could exist in any inch of the dream, any point, like longitude and latitude in your dream. You are every point of longitude and latitude. You don't exist just in your body. That's just where your attention decides to reside for that time in the dream. Just like when near death patients, when they die, their consciousness is no longer or their attention is no longer centered in their body. Now it's different places, and they say I was everywhere at once. They say I was with every person that thought of me. They say I was with my body at all times, but I was also in different places. Because and they're talking about being consciousness in this waking reality. They were at all times at all places because their longitude and latitude was no longer centered or focused on their body. Same way in the dream. Now the beauty of consciousness, what we look at consciousness as always being brain or mind, but consciousness is spirit, it's soul. And not only is it spirit or soul, it's a realm. It's the kingdom of God that Jesus was talking about. It's where you go to get answers. It's literally where you go to interact with God. And the crazy thing about it is waking consciousness and sleeping consciousness is no different. The only difference is the logic. Even here on earth, your neighbor, the person next door to you and across the street, and the people living in the house with you are all individuated fractions of consciousness of the one mind. There's only one consciousness. Just like in your dream, you can have a room full of people, an entire concert, 1,000 people packed out in this show, and every single individual in that room in your dream is you, though they have the illusion of being separated from you, and they have their own consciousness and their own actions, and they do things that are different from you. They are you. It's an amazing thing to realize. And when you can take that into real life, then you get what Jesus was talking about, being awake and not sleep. When you realize what you are awake. When you realize that well, let's not even get into that right now. What I want to talk about is how consciousness communicates. Consciousness, like for example, when you fall asleep, or if you just sit still long enough and you start to daydream, What filled in the environment? What determined that there'd be buildings here and a one-way sign? What determined there'd be trees here and cars here and buses and traffic down the street? What determined that? It is your consciousness that determines that. Your consciousness becomes the realm that your awareness inhabits. Your consciousness determines that realm. It creates that. It creates that from its own self. Everything in your dream is made of consciousness. Just like they're realizing today in science, they're realizing that the atom isn't a particle, that it's a wave of potential, that it's energy that is the same in every inch of the entire universe. That for some reason this energy is equally present in all places, but assumes itself in different forms and shapes and densities. But it's the exact same energy in all places. The exact, which is exactly like dreams. The consciousness is the same all over, creating this entire illusion of densities and different shapes and sizes and individuals and separation. But it's really all one source. It's really all one substance. The dream world and the waking world are literally well, they're exactly alike, besides our logic and the restrictions that we believe in. Just like in a dream, you can fly, but if you can't believe you can fly, guess what? You can't fly. It's just that simple. Your logic is your limit, not the sky. Your logic, your belief. So, what I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to get to is that consciousness plays out. Consciousness speaks to us in dramas. It speaks to us in theatrics, in movie type scenarios. It speaks to us in scenes. So we'll have a dream, and all of a sudden we're in a car having a conversation with somebody going down the street headed towards the sunset or something like that. And this is the perfect atmosphere for consciousness to allow us to receive a concept from ourselves. It's from ourselves. But see, is consciousness is God. Consciousness is the one God, and consciousness is man as God. So, for example, Jesus Christ being God, but also man, God or God man, or man realized, or God in the flesh realized. Just like if you were in a dream and you woke up to the fact that you were actually asleep, and that there was no limitations on what you could do now because this is a dream, right? And anything goes. And then instead of walking on the ground, you decide to soar into the sky and fly. You've just woken up you've just become self-realized. You've realized who you are. You know what you are now. So now you know what you're capable of, as opposed to assuming that you are the person before with the limitations. That's Jesus. That's really all that is. He realized what he was, so his actions had to change to go in order with what he realized that he was. It's the exact same thing. There is no The one consciousness is aware of what it is at all times. The one consciousness is aware of what it is. It's when it inhabits your body, it's taken on the illusion of being you. But once you or it wakes up in this dream that it has created, then you become self-actualized, you become self-realized. That's waking up. That's becoming lucid. And what we don't consider a dream until we die. When near death patients, when they die and they say they look back at life, they realize how much of a dream it is. How you entered into life the same way you fall asleep. You fall asleep and you forget who you are. You forget about reality and waking life. You forget that it even existed until you wake up again. The same thing when people who inhabit the body on earth and then die and say, "Oh, yes, I've always existed." That's what they say. They realize this when they die. They realize this. They say, "Wow, I don't die. I've always lived. The person that I just was a temporary illusion of myself. I've had many of those." Just like a dream. And every night you go to sleep, you're not always yourself. You assume different roles, different characters, because each dream it's amazing. It's amazing. Just think about this. And let me see where we're at in the time on this. But just think about this. I mean, you you when you first fall asleep, one of the first things that you do in consciousness is, in most cases, you work out scenarios from life. The consciousness will have you experience those scenarios over and over and over and over again. So like me, at one point in time, I was really, really heavy playing Call of Duty, the game Call of Duty. I found myself while I was falling asleep running through the maps mentally. Like I was somehow the maps were internalized. I knew every inch of the map, and my character in the dream was running through the map. I was playing the game, that's all I was doing. Because I had done it so much, my reticular activating system had saw it as important. So what happened was, as I'm falling asleep, during the most, I think, analytical time of sleep, what is happening is these are the defense mechanisms to help us do better in the future. So what we do is we run through our problems, the things that we think are important that we want to get right, master them. What consciousness will do is like set up a, if you watch Star Trek, set up a hologram. What's it called? Holodeck. If you watch X-Men, then the Danger Room. But basically, what it does is it sets up a virtual reality room for you to experience waking life over and over and over again without the consequence of, doing it once and suffering the consequence, or doing it once and getting it wrong. It allows you to run through the scenario over and over and over again. It allows you to experience the scenario so that you get the neural pathways to actually um to it so that you create the neural pathways to actually enhance your skill while being asleep. That's what consciousness can do. It creates an environment so that you have the experience, so that you get the thing internally, as opposed to school where you learn through books, you learn theory through repetition. Consciousness, the way that it teaches, is by making you have an experience. That's why it creates the surroundings. That's why it creates the people, because this is all of the, it's all, this is how consciousness, it speaks to you through play, through drama, through movie. That's how it speaks. It speaks through image, through scene, through like, what am I trying to say? It's I feel like it's like movies, like some type of media. I know there's a word for it, but I can't think of the word for it. But it speaks through like drama. It puts on plays for you so that you get the moral at the end. That's what it does. That's how consciousness speaks to us. That's what consciousness is. That's why you think you have coincidences in life. That's consciousness speaking to you, trying to wake you up. The same thing it would be trying to do if it paraded something very weird before your face in a dream. And then when you wake up the next day or the next morning, you're like, man, that was some weird shit. But in while you sleep, it makes perfect sense. But consciousness is trying to wake you up. I can't tell you how many times I've woke up the next day and then realized that consciousness was trying to wake me up in the dream so that I can get what it was saying to me, so that I can bring my awareness into the dream and actually interact and speak with the dream. I know my dream sign. I know the thing that consciousness will bring before my face to give me an opportunity to become aware in the dream. I know what it is. Like it's a person. They bring that person before me all the time. And in the dream, I just interact with the person. And then when I wake up, I'm like, wow, dang it. They were in my dream again. That I like that that's how I'm supposed to know it's a dream. Consciousness is trying to wake you up at all times, in waking life and sleeping life. If you become aware in sleeping life, it will change the way that you see reality in waking life. That is a guarantee. So what happens in waking life, we have coincidences, like, oh man, I was just looking at, let me see. Well, I'm trying to think of an example because some have happened to me very recently. Oh, for example, a friend of mine sent me a text, and in the text it said, when it rains, it pours. That's what he said. When it rains, it pours. Now, they sent me this text, and I went downstairs in the building that I was living in. This is in real life, in waking life. So I go downstairs and I open my phone to see what they said, because I don't know why it took so long for me to do it. But as soon as I open my phone and look at the text, a person like 10 feet from me, as soon as I start reading this text, says, when it rains, it pours. As soon as I look at the text, they said the exact same thing. Now, before, I wouldn't pay attention to that. It would have been a coincidence or it would have been nothing. But the more and more I pay attention to this stuff, the more and more it happens. The more and more I look for these tie-ins, these perfect example, perfect example. Um, but if you've ever it like for example, when you fall asleep and you're dreaming and somehow in your dream before the sound like for example, you fall asleep and let's say somebody knocks on the door and that wakes you up. If you've ever experienced this, then you would understand. If you fall asleep and in the dream you see like somebody walking towards you with some boots on, and they walk and they look at you and they just looking at you for like 5 seconds and like, what are they doing? And then they stomp 3 times, boom, 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 the same time somebody knocks on the door. You know what I mean? It's like, how does consciousness know to set that up before it even happens? And it's like you would think that it was some type of coincidence that the reason that they knocked on the door and the person in the dream did the thing that they did, or it built up to have somebody knock on the door in your dream. Why do those two things correlate? Why did the mind put those two things together? You would think it's a coincidence, but the same thing happens in waking life. It's to show us that this is all consciousness, that it's that connected, that it's hopefully that makes sense how I explained it. But it's there. What I'm trying to say is there is no coincidence. The fact that coincidences happen, or you get there just in the nick of time, or you just missed it, and things like that, is because this is not. I don't want to say it's not real, because it is real, because it's consciousness. Consciousness is reality. But what I'm trying to get you to see is that it's all consciousness. Just like in a dream, your consciousness can put two things together that seem uh, to be a coincidence, but in waking reality, it's the exact same thing. There is no coincidence. There is no deja vu. There are only consciousness trying to wake you up to the fact that you are a part of this play, that it's not concrete life, that the air around you is alive, that it breathes, that it's vibrant, it's vibrating with life, that you are in a dream, that you are co-dreaming with other individuated fractions of consciousness of the one mind. It's trying to wake you up to that fact. And as soon as you become awake to that, it'll manifest to you clearly and speak to you. But if you're waiting for some booming voice coming from the clouds, like in the Ten Commandments, that's I can't say that's not going to happen, but that's not consciousness. Consciousness speaks to you through drama. Consciousness speaks to you through situation and circumstance. It creates this circumstance for you to experience, so you get the moral at the end of the story. That's how it speaks to you. So at all times, if you think yourself to be in this dream, you will be surprised at how life changes for you. It will literally become magical for you. You'll be surprised at how many things begin to you'll work with the flow of consciousness as opposed to trying to swim upstream, which is what most people are doing right now. Because and this is and this is a perfect example, and I'll try to end with this. In the story of Joseph in the Bible, right? Joseph goes through all these things. Every single thing he goes through seems bad. He tells his dream to his brothers. They don't like it. They didn't like him in the first place, so they set out a plan to kill him. The whole plan to kill him gets him into it, actually propels him into what the dream predicted. The dream showed him that his brothers and his mom and his dad would all bow to him. Flash forward like 39 years later. Well, no, not 39, maybe 27 years, I think, something like that. 22 years later, maybe 30 years later, Joseph's brothers are bowing down to him. And the reason that they're bowing down to him is because they need the food that he has. The He has food when there's a famine. The reason that he's in the position to give them food is because they betrayed him, which is why at the end of that story, they come to him and they say, please don't treat us harshly for what we did to you. And he says, what you plotted for evil, God plotted for good. There were two different plots going on: the plot of man and the plot of consciousness or spirit. Spirit saw the moral of this play. Like we're watching the movie and we're like, oh, I hate the bad guy, he sucks, but he makes the hero become a greater hero at the end. If it wasn't for the bad guy, the hero wouldn't have stood up, or yada yada, however it is. And at the end, all the people in this movie know each other and they're cool. The bad guy and the good guy, they're cool with each other. They go have beers after the movie. The lady whose heart he broke, they're best friends in real life. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a play. That's how we are when we leave this earth. When we leave this earth, we're all friends because we understood the roles that we played on earth. But as consciousness, we understand that there is no separation, that there is no evil, that all is consciousness, meaning that all is God, so it's all good. That's why God saw everything that he made from himself. What consciousness assumed itself to be in individual sections or illusions of separation, and saw that it was good. That's why God in Isaiah says, I created light, I created darkness. What are the first things you see in the Bible? Light and darkness. He says, I created good, I created evil. What are the first things you see in the Bible? Light and darkness. He's saying that they're the exact same thing. Functionality and dysfunction, chaos and order. That's what he's saying. I created order and I created chaos. Order comes from chaos. That's why it was darkness before light. So it's not, you know what I mean? When you remove that illusion, everything changes. But what I was trying to say in that the point of that story was the reason Joseph was able to prepare for the famine was because God sent Pharaoh two dreams. In the dream, he showed him clearly, symbolically. He showed him symbolically. If you read the story, you'll be able to see it. He showed him in the same way consciousness speaks, in a symbolic play. He showed him symbolically what was coming. But because he couldn't understand what consciousness was saying, he couldn't prepare. That's why people's lives are fucked up, because they have no communication with consciousness. They have no time to prepare. God showed him seven good cows, seven healthy cows, seven scrawny cows. The seven scrawny cows ate up the seven healthy cows. It bothered him, but he didn't know what it meant. All he knew was God was trying to speak to him. Consciousness was trying to break through and show him something. Then he had another dream. 7 bushels of good looking wheat, 7 bushels of scrawny looking wheat. The 7 bushels ate the other bushels. And Joseph saw it clearly. He said, oh, God is trying to tell you, he showed you the dream twice because it's that severe and it's coming. He's trying to show you that there's going to be 7 years of good and then 7 years of famine. So we need to start taking up we need to start saving 10% from the good years so that we can make it through the last 7 years. And you know what that did? That fed the entire world. But not to mention, the world came to Joseph for this wheat. They gave him money, and then the money ran out, and they gave him land. Then the land ran out, or the cattle, and then the land. But basically, at the end of it, Joseph, because he was able to interpret a dream, had the wealth of the world. Jesus says the symbolic representation of your highest self says, when you know if you don't know yourself, you dwell in poverty, and you are that poverty. That's what he says. He says, if you don't know yourself, he says, if you knew yourselves, you would know that you were the sons of the living Father. But because you don't know yourselves, you dwell in poverty, and you are that poverty. You're the sons of the living Father, right? Now check what Paul says. Paul says, if you are as a child, he says that an heir, though he is ruler of all things, just like the Son of God. And that's what Jesus just said in the Gospel of Thomas, where he says that, you are sons of the living Father. Though you are ruler of all things, meaning that you're not poor, you're wealthy. But he says, if you are if you're an heir and you are a child, you're just like a slave. Though you are ruler over all things, you have no wealth. You are in poverty because you don't know yourself. That's what he's saying. If you're a child still, if you're immature, if you're still asleep, that's what he's saying. If you're still asleep, you're just like a slave. Even though you're heir to the throne, even though the whole kingdom is yours, you don't have access to it. Why? Because you don't know who you are. So you dwell in poverty instead of the wealth that is yours. So if we could flip around what Jesus says, because this is how Hebrews read scripture, if you flip around what Jesus says, if you did know yourself, you would dwell in wealth and you would be that wealth. That's the point. You are the wealth or the poverty, depending on how you see yourself. You're either a slave, even though you're an heir to the throne, you're either a slave, because he says when that individual becomes a man, right? which is what Paul talks about. When he became known, when he knew himself, he put away childish things and became a man. When you become a man, that's synonymous with becoming known, knowing who you are, knowing yourself, knowing what you actually are as consciousness. So when you do that, then you become wealthy and you are that wealth, because then you go from being a slave or a child heir under tutors to becoming the father of the house where you own all things. Isn't that interesting that this thing that you need to know that makes you wealthy is called the kingdom? You know, the king's domain, and wherever the king's domain is where he has authority, where he has rules, where whatever he says goes. Isn't that interesting? In your dream, it's just like that. And in your life, it's just like that. That's why they say it's life and death in the power of the tongue. And those who love it will eat its fruit. All right, so I'll end that there, and hopefully you guys understand what I'm saying. I know this stuff can be like, what? But for those of you who are at the point where you can understand what I'm saying, I think you should get it. I think that it's beautiful that consciousness is that way, because it shows us exactly how to interact with it. If you just sit for a long enough time, just like at the beginning of your dreams, you'll start to go through life scenarios and you'll run through those scenarios mentally, so that because your brain doesn't know the difference between thought and reality. Well, let me say imagination and reality. Imagination is vivid thought, thought that mimics reality to the point where your brain can't tell the difference. So you can imagine having sex and get an erection, or you can imagine arguing with somebody and get an attitude. You know that the chemicals still work the same. The brain will still release the same chemicals because it doesn't know that you're not actually experiencing it, because in all reality, actual experience is conscious. It's conscious experience. So if you experience it in consciousness, it has actually happened. That's why Olympic trainers, Olympic trainers, they have their trainees, when they if they can't get something physically, they have them rehearse it mentally over and 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 over again, because that actually builds the neural pathways and it mimics doing the experience. All right. So, I mean, just think about that. If you just sit long enough, an image will begin to unfold in front of you. That's consciousness beginning to speak to you. Just like that, it's going to create a circumstance for you. It's probably going to be, in most cases, going to be something that you are worried about currently. It's not going to be something really abstract. But if you just allow it to play itself out, don't try to remove your logic from it. That's what you need to do. Try to remove your logic from it, and try to have sleeping logic where anything goes, because there is no such thing as impossible, right? There is no such thing as impossible, and there is no absolute reality except for the reality that you create all reality. So let the dream unfold right in front of you and just see what consciousness has to say. You'll learn a lot about yourself just watching what it says back to you, because it's going to create this entire play for you, and it's going to allow you to interact with it. And you're going to see people pop up. And these are probably going to be people you have issues with in life right now, or it's going to be a situation. Maybe it's about money, something that you're worried about right now. School, you might be worried about, paying back some loans or something like that. Might be something you're worried about, and it's constantly on your mind. And consciousness is going to bring that before you, and it's going to give you a play, and that play is going to have a moral. You just have to stick around to the end. Don't judge. If you judge, you'll begin to interact and break the dream, because see, right now we have more control than we do when we're asleep. When we're asleep, we're kind of like when you become really aware, you can change the entire environment in a dream as well. But you'll see what I'm saying if you actually do this. It's changed my life. I can't tell you how many life changing messages I've received from consciousness this way. Not little stuff. I mean life changing, like things that I use to this day to still make my decisions based off of messages I receive from consciousness in waking life and in dreams, because it's all the same, and in meditation, because it's all the same. So just, if you think that it's some weird stuff, give it a shot. You sleep every night anyway. You experience this realm of consciousness and utter weirdness anyway. Just hone it. Use it for yourself. Use it as an actual skill, and you will have wealth. or shut up, stop complaining. Don't complain if you don't want to go where the answers are. It's just that easy. This one consciousness has all it's it blows your mind because it's you and it has answers that you don't know because you are assuming to not know those things. It's crazy. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's really amazing. It's like it's so interesting to see God pretending to be somebody else and fully believing itself to be something else. It's like having Superman really believe that he's Clark Kent, and then one day he trips and like knocks down a building. Like, what the fuck? How did I do this? And because he forgot who he was, he doesn't realize what he is. And then one day he goes and like Hancock. That's a perfect example. He's a superhero who didn't know how he was a superhero. He didn't remember his origins. You know what I mean? So he's all jacked up in the head until he remembers where he comes from, and then he gets his shit together. It's like same thing. It's the same thing. You have to wake up. When Paul talked about that face to face realm, well, that's that. That'll be a whole nother video. But thank you guys for watching. I'll end it here. I'll try to do more videos like this because I think it's time to really get everything up and out. I don't know how many people are going to rock with it, but it doesn't really matter if I know I've stumbled across videos that have really impacted me, and it was just some quote unquote nobody. You know what I'm saying? And just a little bit of what they said just got me on the right track, or was what I needed. It was the confirmation that I needed to go with. That's the other thing. Confirmations. Confirmations are also a sign from consciousness that you are asleep, just like coincidence. It's trying to wake you up. Whew, this is going to be a very interesting life, folks. I hope you enjoyed as much as I do. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.